tip of the cap to you, and thank you for joining us here on the Pilot Money Guys podcast. Flight 62, we're going to be talking market-based cash balance plans. That is a mouthful, but first on this podcast, we talk about flying and some aviation industry news and throw in some good old financial fun and talk about the finance topic du jour. I'm your host, wealth manager, and pilot, Robert the Rubber Mallet Eklund. Of course, I'm joined by the Godfather, certified financial planner and pilot, Charlie Mattingly. Welcome, Godfather.
Thank you. Welcome back, Rubber Mallet. It's good to have you, man. I know you've been busy and traveling and flying and traveling again. So
summertime.
Yeah, summertime.
And of course, we're joined by a financial advisor, former KC-10 extraordinaire pilot, and now cargo pilot, John the Creme de la Creme Kremer. Welcome, Creme de la Creme.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rob. I appreciate you guys. It's always good to be back on the show.
Yeah, I love having you, man.
Hey, Rubber Mallet, you missed it a little bit when we were in Florida. John, Creme de la Creme Creamer, almost got a new call sign, Queen Bee.
He's Queen Bee.
Yeah. He's a bee farmer.
Oh, yeah, that's man. Right. I forgot about
got
that.
Bees.
He was the bees. Queen Bee.
I got bees. That reminds me of the Dumb and Dumber. I got worms, but no. All right. Aviation news. United's got an agreement in principle here, which is the talk of the town, I guess. Mm-hmm. So it's supposed to be pretty good. Little news article says it's the airlines and its pilots on Saturday reached a labor agreement. This is obviously from last week, that will give the latter a significant pay increase after the union rejected an earlier offer last year, instead to seek even higher wages with pilots in short supply. The pilots will get a cumulative 34.5% up to 40.2%, depending on where you're at there in the seniority list. And that's an increase in pay raises in the new 4-year contract, according to ALPA. This is kind of coming on when analysts at Jefferies estimate the United States is short about 10,000 pilots, and this supply-demand gap is projected to last until 2027, which obviously this AIP, which is supposedly really, really good. I don't know the ins and outs, obviously, of it, but it's supposedly good enough to put American Airlines AIP in jeopardy. So they may be going back to the drawing board, is what I've heard. You guys heard anything else on that?
Yeah, that was written in a Reuters article about they found some memos from the union there at American and said, "Hey, wait a second, we're our agreement in principle, I think is what they had. They were getting ready to vote on it. Is not quite up to par, so they might go back to the drawing table. That could be interesting."
Yeah. We'll see how it all plays out. But good news, I from what I know and talking briefly to a couple of United buds, it's good news for them. They feel like they're
phenomenal
on the right track there. So that's good stuff. And in that plan, I think there is the market-based cash balance plan, the MBCBP, as we're calling it here. But this is kind of draws right in. It's kind of questions from the flight deck, Charlie. Yeah. This is right in with our aviation news. What do you got?
I know it just keeps rearing its ugly head, maybe pretty head. I don't know. The age 67 thing. So now it's been passed by, what do I say? The House of Representatives. Thank you. My political science is lacking, but it's been passed. So last time it was a committee, Rob, right? And now they've passed it. Now the Senate has to come up with their own bill and their own version of this bill by September 30th, if it's going to happen. But nonetheless, let's talk about it anyway. It's interesting because we start to get some questions and we start to go, well, what if this happens? I mean, how do we think about this? And one of the most fascinating things is we start to learn a ton from our current clients that have retired before, from people that study these things. And what we've learned is that if you don't plan or make a conscious decision and being intentional about this, then you will be unhappy. And what I mean by that is when and if we get some words on this passage, sit down, do your homework, be intentional about this decision. Because when you have control over these types of things and you make a conscious decision, you will be happier. If you don't think about it, if you don't plan for it, then you'll be You could be bitter and angry if you just don't make it. Anybody ever flown with anybody bitter and angry? I don't know.
Never.
Is that a possibility? But that's my first, going in thing. And I don't mean a full on financial plan, although that might be the smartest thing to do, but I just mean talking about it with your spouse. So let me just get past that stuff for a second. So make a decision, be intentional. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you love flying and you you want to fly, well, then keep doing it. If you don't love it and you think it's going to make you unhappy, then make sure that you can, provide the needs that you have in retirement and retire. Don't feel obligated. A lot of times I think we as pilots, man, we're leaving money on the table. Back when I know during COVID time and people were taking these separation packages, like, I can't leave the money on the table. It's like, yes, you can. It's called retirement. You're going to leave money on the table. So if you don't love it and you've got plenty of money, then go, okay. So let me get into the numbers. So what I did is I kind of used my own financial plan as a guinea pig, let's say. So I kind of arranged things such that I was right on the cusp, maybe, of not having enough in retirement at age 65. And what we do is we have kind of like the RRM model, right? In the airline world. So I don't know if you have that there at FedEx. You'll do the RRM stuff, and you've got in the green and the red, all that kind of jazz.
No, I'm unfamiliar. Is that like
Okay.
like a fatigue check before you go fly? Make sure everyone.
It's risk resource management, just risk management.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry for getting nerdy on you there, but anyway, the retirement stuff is the same way. Like if you're on track, then you're in the green, right? You're between 70% and 90% probability of success. A lot of people have seen that before. So I arranged my own financial plan such that I was below that confidence zone and about 68%, 69%. And so then I said, what if at age 65, I stopped saving, but I just didn't pull out of my retirement funds for 2 more years, simulating that I'm still still an airline pilot. I don't save anymore. This would be like a hybrid retirement. I stop saving, continue flying part-time, but don't take money out of your retirement plans. That's one idea, if you're right on the cusp anyway. So what this difference made, again, to just clarify, that's just 2 years of not pulling money out of your retirement plans, but not saving anything either. Okay. So let me just share my screen for those that are on YouTube, possibly. That took my percentage probability of success from about 69% to 77%. And that's a pretty big deal. You know what I mean? That's a pretty big cushion as far as my success rate and my probability of success.
Charlie, why did you choose not to continue to fund in that 2 years your retirement?
Yeah, that's a great question. You absolutely could continue to fund it if you want to, but this is kind of for people that are right on the cusp of, hey, maybe I should retire, maybe I should keep flying. And you absolutely could continue to save that money if you want to. But one of the things people feel it's almost unnatural is, hey, don't save anymore. And it's like, what do you mean? I'm working, I should save. Well, no, you're kind of a hybrid retired person. You don't have to save right now unless you're just really way behind. But I'm kind of talking to those people that are right on the cusp of, deciding, should I retire? Should I stay? Should I go? Etc. So this is just one idea. And again, we call it the hybrid retirement, where you work a couple trips a month. Of course, you're still going to get these non-elective contributions at whatever airline you're at. And so you actually will be saving a little bit, but take your $30,000 401k contribution and spend it. You're in retirement now. You're a hybrid retired person. So have some fun, enjoy that hybrid retirement. But just the 2 years alone of not pulling money out of your investments is a big deal. And that proved to be, in my certain circumstances, about 8% increase in probability of success. So that provides you a lot of things. It provides you some cushion in case of a bad market. It provides you, if you're interested in leaving money to your children, it provided And on the screen here up top, you can see the difference in ending values was about 7 million versus 4 million left over. Those are my circumstances and my plan anyway, as far as the difference. So everybody could be a little different there, but I've talked a lot. John, Rob, any comments, questions, thoughts?
I just like the idea of the mindset. I think that raising the age from 65 to 67, there's a lot of heated debate whether it's a good idea, bad idea. But from the captains I've flown with, I think it's just really independent.
Yeah.
Some guys are at nearing their retirement or nearing the age in which they're forced to retire, and they're still so passionate about flying. And so I think that's really the idea. I think if you spent a long time in the airlines and you've had a successful career, I don't think the question's probably not, can I make the bills at the end of the month? I think the question is, are you getting satisfaction out of this?
Yeah.
And then what is it that you want to do with your money? Is it leave a legacy? Is it be generous with your wealth? So it's a very independent situation, but I definitely think that pushing past 67, pushing past 65 just to not leave money on the table is the wrong attitude. Yeah. So I'd say if you love it, keep going. I got no problem flying with you, but I think those that are just doing it for the dollars, that'd be a challenge.
Yeah. I love what you said, Charlie, is being intentional. You don't have to keep flying till 67. Mm-hmm. It might help your financial perspective. If you're on that cusp, like you said, that 8% can be huge in retirement, or might not be, who knows, right. But having that buffer's nice. So that's my 2 cents.
The last thing I'll address here about this decision, and we've seen this a lot. Again, we as advisors get this perspective of other people. We've walked the walk with people as they retire early, late, on time, whatever. And it is a scary transition, period. I mean, it's when we helped a lot of people with the voluntary separation plan at Southwest, and it is a fearful transition. I went through it myself. So what I don't want people to do is go, oh, I can fly till 67, so I should fly because I'm afraid to leave. Yeah. And I don't want that to happen. And I think the good, proper planning, intentionality can prevent that. If you're squarely in the green, when we can help people figure that out, you might know it yourself already, then retire. Don't keep dragging that bag around if you don't want to. Yeah. That's the thing. Nobody wants to fly with a grumpy old pilot. Yeah. But if you love to fly, keep doing it. Part-time, maybe hybrid retirement is an option, but put some thought into it, and I think for those, again, that are on the cusp, it's probably a tough decision. But if you're way behind, maybe it's an easy decision. So anyway, there's a lot to it. I just think some intentionality is worth a lot. When we helped folks with the VSP, it really turned into if you stay this much longer, it's going to translate into this much more income per month. Is it worth it to you to work? And let me give you a real number example. Sometimes it worked out this way. If you do not take the voluntary separation plan, you continue to work 5 more years, you're going to have $1,000 or more per month in income. Is that worth 5 more years of working? Now, I don't know the exact number for, a 2-year transition, depends on a lot of things, but that's how we kind of framed it in the end. You know what I mean? Is it worth it? And sometimes people say, no, it's not worth it. I'm out of here.
All right. Okay, pilot money, folks. Let's get real for a second, okay? What are your goals? 1 year from today, 5 years from today, 25 years from today? How are you going to pay for these goals? Need some help? Give us a jingle at 865-240-2292. Extension's 2 for Charlie, 7 for me. John, what's your extension out there? I was meaning to look that up, but I
think I'm 9. I think I'm number 9.
9 for John. Your goals are out there, gang. Let's go get them, okay? Enough of that.
If you pay Lisa, you might be able to get a better extension number. I don't know what,
Is that
up.
Is this pay to play?
Yeah, you pay Lisa, give her a little tip or something, and she might bump you up on the call
on the old extension list
tree there. I guess I don't know.
It's I thought it was a seniority based thing.
It probably is.
I think I like 9 better than 7. I'll trade you straight up right now, John.
I'm a 09 grad, so I'll take 9.
Ah, dang.
09.
Perfect.
Okay. And here we go. Enough of the fighter lingo. We're not going to say the fight's on because we got creme de la creme KC-10 John Kremer on board here. So let's try some tanker lingo.
I like
breakaway. MBCPP.
Oh,
let's go.
I had bad memories just came up. Sorry about that.
Post-traumatic stress going on.
Bad memories. Charlie. I got to tell a story real quick. So we're in the bar on a Friday night telling stories, and somebody is describing this awful breakaway story from a KC-135. We had a dignitary on board. They're describing this he was a civilian, describing his fear of this breakaway and the KC-135 accelerating quickly. And at the end of the story, I'm thinking the whole time, I'm like, oh man, I'm toast. You know, it's going to be embarrassing when they tell everybody who this story is. And at the end, they said, and the award goes to someone else. And I was like, sweet. They thought it was somebody else, but it was me. So that was quite scary for everyone.
Yeah, that's no joke.
That's right.
All right. Here we go. Market-based cash balance plan. What is it? And I'm going to try to help everyone out here with a little visualization. A lot of people have seen this kind of chart, but in its simplest form, it is designed to replace a pension, right? That's just big picture. In fact, it's labeled a defined benefit, just like a pension. It is not a defined contribution like your 401k. However, in order to paint this picture, if you will, we're going to describe the 401k limits, meaning the 402G limit and the 415C. And it's a little bit different here for the passenger carrier airlines like Delta, United, maybe Southwest and American, and the cargo carriers, FedEx and potentially UPS. However, in order to describe this, that's what we're going to get into a little bit. So for the passenger carriers, let's visualize a large bucket, okay, with 2 kegs. I'd love to throw beer in there if we can. So large bucket, 2 kegs hang over the top of the bucket. These kegs pour into the bucket when the tap is turned on. Now, the bucket is labeled 401k, and it can hold up to $66,000 if you're under age 50. If you're 50 or older, then it's $73,500, right? That's the 415C limit. One of the 2 kegs pouring into this bucket is labeled yours or pilots or whatever you want to call it. It's yours. You get to decide when you turn that keg on or off. However, once you reach the 402G limit, which is $22,500 if you're under 50 and $30,000 if you're 50 or older, then it will be funneled elsewhere, right? And that's where the MBCBP comes in. Say that 3 times fast. So that's the first keg. The second keg is labeled companies, right? And it is automatically turned on. They don't get to decide when to turn it on. It's automatically turned on and pours directly into the 401k bucket until the bucket is full at that 66,000 or 73,500 in your case, in which case then it is funneled to a different place, and different companies have different methods on what they do with that. But that is where the market-based cash balance plan bucket would come in. So it would transfer from your 401k bucket and then funnel into the market-based cash balance plan. Switching gears a little bit here, that is where it is a little bit different for cargo carriers in that that keg that is labeled company doesn't just drain into your 401k and then once that 401k bucket is filled, go into the market-based cash balance plan bucket. It is instead simultaneously pouring into both your 401k and the MBCBP bucket. And that may be not exactly accurate, but just for visualizing purposes, 2 kegs, one's yours, one's the company's. Their money's going to pour into your 401k and the MBCBP if you fill up that 401k for a passenger, and simultaneously if you're a cargo. Guys, what do you think? Is that, pour some details on there.
Nice. It sounds pretty good. You know, I think the thing that I'll add it for context before we get into some details is kind of what you said. The cargo, UPS, FedEx, they've got pensions. So those are probably going away in some form or fashion, and they're leaning towards cash balance plans, market-based cash balance plans to replace them. So they're coming from a different starting point, whereas the other passenger carriers, Delta, particularly, I think theirs is getting ready to be in full effect. There's some decisions that Delta pilots need to make by August 1st. Theirs is coming from a different starting point where it's exactly what you described. You start with the 401k, and then any spillover overages, as you described, are potentially then going to go into the cash balance plans. So I think that might be a little bit of perspective to help as well. But that graphic is good that the kegs, especially, that can stick in our brains.
Yes. John, what do you got? Anything to throw in there?
No, I think the summary is good. I think that there's just broad ways to look at these. Every cash balance plan is built just a little bit differently. So you really have to dig into the small font and figure out exactly what they are. So up to the cash balance plan, it starts with those first two words, market based. You're seeing a lot more of these pop up just because I think cash balance plans have been around for quite some time, but now we can base them on the market, and they can shoot for certain returns or mirror some different index. And we'll probably get into more of the details there, but your cash balance plan at your employer, and it seems like what the airlines have so far, Delta's is different than FedEx, where Delta's is, the spillover form of tax deferred savings. And at FedEx, it's essentially, no, we're going to mirror a pension, and we're trying to replace a pension with a cash balance plan. So there are some subtle differences, and if you get offered this, definitely, talk to your financial advisor, dig into all the details, because you don't want to get, at least in FedEx, you have to decide, hey, do I want this, or do I want the legacy pension plan? So it's a one-time push the button after a certain date. There's no going back. So it is a big decision, and it's super impactful. So definitely encourage everybody to read the fine print on these.
That's super important, John. You brought up there that I probably should have put this at the beginning, is that plan, the market-based cash balance plan, is a tax-advantaged account, which is why you might get into it in the first place.
I'm going to go ahead and give our man Damian Jeanette some credit here, because he wrote a great article. And I looked all over Department of Labor, IRS, just trying to get smart on these things, but his was very succinct. It was excellent. So I'm going to use his information and give him the credit. But basically, there's three components, and there's the salary credits, and generally this is a percentage that we're used to seeing with our 401k. And then, as we've already alluded to, there's some potential spillover, the excess contributions that we've either had come to people in cash before that's taxed, or go into potentially non-qualified accounts like there are at Southwest. And non-qualified, by the way, means you're a creditor of the company if they go into bankruptcy. So that's important. By the way, cash balance plans are qualified. So they are yours. They are not subject to bankruptcy. So that's a beautiful thing. So the third component there is lifetime earning credits. And we won't go into those into a whole lot of detail just yet. But cash balance plans, again, we're used to seeing the percentages there of what I can contribute. And so that's going to vary a little bit, again, at FedEx, UPS versus the passenger airlines. And basically there's going to be a percentage that of rate of return. All the money will be pooled together. You don't get to pick individual investments like you do your 401k. All this money will be pooled together, but you will see a specific dollar amount that is accredited to you. And there will be a specific rate of return that the managers or fiduciaries of the plan are shooting for. And that's a little bit of a sticky wicket, because the traditional cash balance plans have a guaranteed percentage, but a market-based cash balance plan is not necessarily guaranteed at that rate. There's a fiduciary obligation for them to get to that, but basically they may not. Now, the IRS rules say that you're not allowed to lose money in these in the aggregate. However, I did read that if you're a participant in one of these plans, you could see a negative year. I don't know exactly what that looks like. I don't know exactly how the performance looks like, but overall, over the aggregate, the company would then have to make up the money if there was a losing year to try to get you to that standard. So that's a little vague, I know, but nonetheless, they're based off market. rates. They're usually around 5.5 to 6.5%. So comments, thoughts on that so far, guys?
No, it's good. We're kind of getting into some of the pros and cons here, and I'll just throw in. Let's hit the pros first. Although we kind of have a little bit here, but it's and John, I know this is yours, so I might be stealing your thunder. But it's the inflation risk, right? To a regular pension for those who have a pension, right? The cargo carriers, there's inflation risk there, right, John?
Yeah, I think this is something that's pretty specific to FedEx right now. Is we're recording this at an interesting time. Our TA vote closes on Monday, so by the time this comes out, we'll know whether or not the TA got voted in and whether people should be looking into these cash balance plans. But essentially, if your pension, doesn't have some sort of inflationary raise to it. So if there is no tacked on, like the military pension will be increased by a certain percentage. So I would say that it takes away some of that inflation erosion. But for the FedEx pension, there was a lot of people talking about this being the last increase in our FedEx pension. So it's kind of one of those things where it looks like all of the air carriers are going away from this standard pension, the legacy pension. Well, this is the last of it. And so for a guy like me, for 25 or 30 years left in the airline, we have to think about this inflation risk. We have to think about, over the course of 25 years, how much does this defined benefit plan, the time value of money, that will not buy me the same amount that it'll buy somebody that is retiring in 2 years. So essentially, even though the defined benefit plan is offered to both people, it is much more valuable to somebody retiring in 2 or 3 years than it is to somebody retiring in 25 or 30 years.
Yeah, I think that's super important that you brought that up. And Charlie, you hit on this, but part of that, when you're thinking about those long-term type scenarios, John, is that you've got the bankruptcy out there that is a risk, right? The business risk, if you will, that whatever company you're working for, and I don't care who it is, they could go out of business, right? At some point. We obviously hope that doesn't happen, but your pension is not protected, unlike the MBCBP is protected from bankruptcy and creditors. So I think that's definitely a pro in my book.
Yeah. And we've seen some of these, just pensions over time have kind of gone away. Companies have gone away from offering pensions just for that reason. The legislation that protected the employee for maintaining that pension has made the investments be a little bit more conservative. And that has cost the company more money to essentially fund these pensions. So I think that's part of the equation why we're seeing these cash balance plans pop up. And then I think the other thing too, when you talk about positives, it is just another way that somebody that saves a lot of money or has a high income rate, it's just another way to tax defer more savings. So I would say your next pro for a cash balance plan is really just the tax deferment. I don't have to take that money in that year. I can defer it to a later time and then take it at my leisure.
Yeah, love it. I love it. And these are, like you alluded to there, Charlie, these are actual dollars set aside. They're commingled, but each pilot has their own cash balance, which is totally misleading because it's not actually cash. It's in something like a 40-60, equity bond mix there. I believe Delta's is going into the BlackRock LIRIX target date fund, which is 40% stocks and 60% bonds. So funny.
Yeah. Just additional pros, just to sum that up, because you ask someone outside the airline world that's not thinking about contracts and all that kind of stuff, they go, "Duh, yes, it's awesome, do it." But I know there are more nuanced decisions for all of the airline pilots to make, such as the FedEx UPS decision. It's really a pension or cash balance decision, it seems like. Whereas, the Delta people now are having to decide, do I opt into this thing or not? And I think some of these will be like one-time decisions. So one of our folks we were talking to is like, you kind of look down the road and go, man, if I opt into this, there's potentially a lot of money going into this thing, which is great, right? But let's say down the road, 10, 15 years, your income at an airline is 400, 500 or more $1,000. You are way above these IRS limits as far as your savings capacity, and you're saving a ton of money in these cash balance plans, which is awesome. Don't get me wrong, it's awesome. But what if I said, I don't want, or maybe I don't need to save that much right now? Well, we were kind of like, man, I don't know if I can turn that off or not. It's going to depend on the different plan. But one of the things we thought about was, well, if at some point in the future I'm doing the cash balance plan, I've got a lot of money because the overage, the over the limits, like you talked about, Rob, is significant. I could just dial back or turn off my 401k contribution. That's a little bit of flexibility there, because I can turn that off and on pretty easily. Depending on, again, I'm not sure if, depending on the airline, if you'll be able to turn off, turn on. Some of them seem like they're irrevocable decisions, but that was something that we talked about as well.
You need to really sit down and think about how you're gonna fund your retirement, what your goals are, and work backwards is obviously what the way we like to do it. But the part of this that is tough, I think, I'm just going to throw some cons out there myself, is as a military person who's got a retirement, right? You already have a huge bond-like asset in your whatever life portfolio, if you call it there. And this is going to throw even more. A 60% bond portfolio in this fund is just going to, put more into that. So it could allow you to be riskier and then therefore have a higher expected return with your 401k. And I'm not saying don't do it, but it's not a straight, clear-cut answer by any means, because you don't want to put too much in. You don't want to have too many bond-like assets out there, I don't think. Any thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah, that's a great point. Everybody's going to be so different, and I like what you said too, just about like, well, if I have this military retirement, I've got this cash balance. Now we need a significant balance in the cash balance plan, but nonetheless, let's say that happens. Well, yeah, I could be then a little more aggressive in some other areas as far as maybe 401k or things like that. But John, what you got?
Yeah, I think this just is another reason to get back into it and just and look at the details and then look at your specific scenario. I know it seems cliche to say, hey, go talk to a financial advisor about this stuff. But these are things that I would talk to another financial advisor about, because I look at these and I look at them kind of the same way that you do, Rob. Like, I don't want to be that conservative. I'm young.
Right.
I have all this time to make up. I plan to work to at least age 60, at least, hopefully.
We're just a couple of young, dumb kids out here, John.
Right. I say, scared money don't make money. And so I have a little bit of
advice. Is that advice for everyone out there?
That's not advice. No, that was a movie quote, probably. So I would say that for your young, and even, I mean, we have guys at FedEx that are in their late 20s, single. They have all this time. And so putting money into the cash balance plan, their biggest advantage is just time. So just like with anything finance related, compound interest is going to be their biggest their friend. So 6.5%, yeah, maybe I would like to have more. For some people, that's a perfect amount of interest every year. But I think for the young folks, I'd be cranking up my 401k and whatever investments I had elsewhere and make those as risky as I could if I was in this cash balance plan, because it's probably more conservative than your young folks are going to want.
Yeah, that's a great point. You brought up the 6.5% fiduciary target, if that's what they're shooting for there. And that's, when treasury bonds are returning 5%, 6.5 is that's fairly easy to hit. I would guess. We don't know what's going to happen, but you can obviously, the higher expected return in your 401k is there, or even your brokerage account. I'll play devil's advocate for a second. There may be a situation where you pour that money, instead of going into the NBC BP, it goes into your brokerage account that has a higher equity portfolio and therefore a higher expected return, and that maybe beats the tax advantages of the market-based cash balance plan.
Hmm.
And there is definitely scenarios where that will probably happen. So it's something to think about, and it's not a no-brainer. And the other thing to think about here is taxes, right? We all expect, the expectation is taxes will be higher in the future. And this fund, which is great, that trying to beat the tax man is always something we like to do, but it's kicking the can down the road when taxes might be higher. And again, for people who have other income coming in retirement, you might be kicking it down the road and potentially be in a position where you're actually paying more on those taxes because it becomes part of your IRA and is then subject to required minimum distributions.
I think y'all bring up some good points there, in that if you're doing, well, everybody's situation is so very different. That's firstly. But if you're doing one of these, then, and you're participating in a cash balance plan, I can't say the acronym like you do, Rob, but I'll just say cash balance plan. But anyway, it may change the way you think in other areas, like you alluded to. Maybe more aggressive in my 401k, or maybe I use Roth in my 401k now, where maybe I was not doing that before. So yeah, I think that it's going to require a little different way of thinking. I think there's a couple of things I want to stress though on the pros category.
Yes.
And that is the flexibility at retirement. I think we've alluded to it a little bit, but I just want to stress that when you retire as an airline pilot, you can roll these cash balance plans over into IRAs. You can then control, or not. You could do an annuity. You could control the distribution of the asset, the money. You could control that. And the reason I say that's, I stress that word, is because let's say I'm a Southwest pilot and I'm doing the non-qualified stuff.
You aren't a Southwest pilot.
That's right. If I was,
sorry,
at one point, yeah, then I have to, that distribution period is inflexible, absolutely inflexible. And, oh, by the way, you make that decision when you're a new hire. So as a new hire, I'm like, should I do this 30 years down the road, or should I do that? It's like, whoa, oftentimes that may not be a great decision. So now you're at 65 retiring, and you've done a great job of saving in your non-qualifieds, whatever. And now you're faced with this tax situation, which you have no flexibility over whatsoever. And you can't change, if you have an aggressive mix there at 60, 65, you can't change that on past contributions, only future contributions. So there's some inflexibility there because of the non-qualified nature that cash balance plans are far superior, I would say.
And to foot stomp that too, Charlie, is you only get this decision once if you're hired by the airlines. My understanding is most of the plans, I think, you're going to automatically be opted into it. You won't even have a choice if you're hired after the whatever the signature date there. So it's not like you're stuck forever. Right now, as far as I know, you can get it out at 59 and a half and start taking advantage of some of those things. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think I think you're exactly right on that, Rob. I think that there is, I think it's really, as your age and longevity in the airline go, this decision becomes more favorable one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think that is the whole other side of this thing is, what are my options when I withdraw this money? How am I going to be taxed? And we're going to assume that, the tax rates are going to continue to go up, but we don't really know. So make the best decision, I say, on the current tax rates and see what that's going to look like for you in retirement. Because if you have a military pension, also a cash balance plan, and then maybe just a little bit of other pension, I mean, you could be looking at, I guess that's a silver lining, for an awesome story. You got all this pension money, but at the same time, the tax man is going to come after all of these funds. So the flexibility of the cash balance plan, I think, is also key in the equation.
Yeah, and it's such a personal decision. Of course, again, we're not giving financial advice. Everyone's situation is so specific that you really need to run the numbers and have some calculators out there working for you. Obviously, we can help with that. Charlie, I know you've got some strategies and tactics we can think about, or if you've already hit them.
Yeah, I'll just summarize because we did kind of bring them up as we went along there. I just think what we've talked about today is interesting in that if you anytime you get a chance to save more, save taxes, it's pretty daggone, good thing to do. Again, once you start doing this though, that it's going to open up some other options or some other things to think about. And that is, what is my overall risk as an investor? Am I young, retired military, with a pension? That always has had an impact on the risk you could take in your portfolio. Also, do I have enough Roth? Do I have enough tax-free money? Because again, if I'm, retired and the only income I have coming to me is all from pre-tax assets, boy, I'm going to have zero tax flexibility in retirement. So those are some things to think about as these cash balance plans become more popular. And then finally, the flexibility and savings, should still be there. You just might have to be creative with it. And I think that saving too much money is probably a good problem to have, and maybe doesn't apply to that many people, but nonetheless, you'll have a little bit of flexibility by, hey, I think I'm good to go. I'm in the green, so to speak. I can tone down my 401k contributions, even if I'm locked into a certain cash balance contribution. So there's some flexibility in other ways. So I think those are some great lessons, to take away from here. And I think the cash balance plan is overall a positive thing, especially as it compares to a no cash balance plan, no pension plan, or a non-qualified plan. I can't speak as intelligently to if I'm coming from a pension and cash balance, but nonetheless, those are my takeaways.
I love it. Any other thoughts, guys? Any last bits?
I'll throw one more question out there because I think I need your help on this, Rob. But I think these cash balance plans incentivize people that may not want to work a full airline career. So we kind of opened with that, increasing the age to 67. I think a market-based cash balance plan gives you the option to retire younger than 60, because it seems like if you would pull the calculator on these cash balance plans from our union website, gives you the option from 60 to 65. My thought is, if the cash balance plan, like you hit a number, you hit your goals, those things that Charlie talked about, like, hey, I'm in the green, I'm ready to go. I think if you're able to save these amounts, I'm over the 415 limit, and then I'm pouring into the spillover bucket. I think there's a little incentive that is, I'm going to throw that in the pros category for just retiring early. So what do you think?
I love it. That's a great point. That this is a great point for the pros category, is it allows you to save above and beyond those limits into this new bucket that is still tax qualified, which is, to your point, once you hit those, your goals and you do that, you can retire earlier, right? Once you've hit those goals that you're looking for, then it's fantastic, and you don't need to keep working, to Charlie's point there earlier. Yeah. Love it. A couple of retirement center quotes, since we brought up age 67, talking to MBCBP, for you to ponder on your drive or flight commute or daily ritual. This one's unknown. I don't know who did this one, but I like it anyways. Retirement is not the end of the road. It is the beginning of the open highway. And the second one's from Betty Sullivan. There is a whole new kind of life ahead, full of experiences just waiting to happen. Some call it retirement. I call it bliss. Okay, that's it. Let us be the first to welcome you to the final destination of Flight 62, market-based cash balance plans. Did you learn anything from this free podcast? If so, pay it forward, tell someone about it, or at least leave us a review. We aim to make the world better stewards of their money. Help us do this. Please shoot us any questions that you want us to cover on the next questions from the flight deck, and Charlie will answer those with fervor, I would say. And remember, as Emerson said, the world makes way for those who know where they're going. And so, as I say, plan accordingly. From all of us at the Pilot Money Guys, we wish you smooth rides and soft in the zone landings.
Leading Edge Financial Planning, LLC is a registered investment advisor. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Leading Edge Financial Planning and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. For additional information, please visit our website at www.leadingedgeplanning.com. The information provided is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute investment advice, and it should not be relied on as such. It should not be considered a solicitation to buy or an offer to sell a security. It does not take into account any investor's particular investment objectives, strategies, tax status, or investment horizon. You should consult your attorney or tax advisor. The views expressed in this commentary are subject to change based on market and other conditions. These documents may contain certain statements that may be deemed forward-looking statements. Please note that any such statements are not guarantees of any future performance, and actual results or developments may differ materially from those projected. Any projections, market outlooks, or estimates are based upon certain assumptions and should not be construed as indicative of actual events that will occur. All information has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but its accuracy is not guaranteed. There is no representation or warranty as to the current accuracy, reliability, or completeness of, nor liability for, decisions based on such information, and it should not be relied on as such.